Welcome to the Empowered INSEADian, a show that hosts talks designed to elevate and inspire you towards greater life fulfillment and elevated consciousness. These talks are raw and real. I'm Szabi Baranyi, a mindset and human performance coach.
And I'm Neha Molugu, a holistic growth retreats curator. This is talk number 2 from the Empowered INSEADian series, which is a space where we talk about living a more conscious, aware, and empowered life in a raw and real way. So a couple of months ago, when Szabi and I first started talking about this idea, one of the key things that we wanted to bring to light is themes or topics that aren't usually spoken about or are considered taboo. We're all probably going through similar journeys of wanting to find fulfillment in life. Today, the topic that we've chosen is step 1 to fulfillment, cultivating self-awareness. So Szabi, I want to open up with the first question. What is self-awareness, according to you?
Yeah, thanks, Neha. It's fascinating for me that I've gone through a whirlwind of an accelerated inner development journey in the past 3 years in particular, to be able to kind of step back and reflect and try to summarize to you and for the audience. Self-awareness. What is self-awareness? So let's split it into what is the self and what is awareness. So self, for me at least, the definition that resonates, and there's many definitions we can Google, basically consciousness or being comprised of 4 different bodies: the mental, the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual. Some philosophies have even described 7, but these 4 resonate with me because I've started to be aware of them and work with them. And they're basically all manifestations of energy. They're energetic bodies. It's just energy moving around different ways. So mental, physical, emotional, spiritual bodies. That's the self. Self comprises these 4 bodies. Note that mental also has subconscious and conscious mental body. They're different, very distinct. Now on to awareness. Awareness, simplistically put, is knowing, perceiving, and being cognizant of stuff, like events, right? There's, again, many other definitions, but let's work with this one, which is simple enough. And then finally, fulfillment definition is, well, let me make a distinction between spiritual fulfillment and material kind of 3D worldly fulfillment. So fulfillment is often the satisfaction or happiness that is confused with the much deeper sensation and state that is fulfillment on a spiritual level. So the fulfillment we want to be talking about here is a sustainable internal state that one feels that comes from living a valued, connected, and a purposeful life. It's not something that, it can be shown to you. I can't hold it up and say, here you go, Neha, after 3 coaching sessions with me, this is your fulfillment. It's much deeper work. It's unique to everyone. The only one that has the answers is you. So within yourself, you will find what that complex, multifaceted state of being looks like. It's feeling like as if you're complete. It's like you don't want to be anywhere else. You don't need to be striving and achieving for anything else than the path you're already on now. It's your destiny. So that's fulfillment at a deeper level. The important thing is not to confuse it with happiness, which is a very simple, fleeting, never constant emotional state.
And that's the dream, right? To get to a state of fulfillment. Why do you think self-awareness is important on this journey?
I now think that self-awareness is like an infrastructure layer to fulfillment and to life. Because how can I possibly expect to feel fulfilled if I'm not even aware what is the status of myself, right? The 4 bodies. And what information those 4 bodies are conveying to me. So spiritually, am I in a good state? Is my well-being emotionally positive? Is my physical body doing okay? Are my mental bodies giving positive feedback about my state and my environment and the way I'm being? So if I'm not aware of what's going on, then I can't even expect to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
So I think that's the key reason. And it also became clear to me, peak performance is very important. an elevated life experience is very important. We only achieve this by optimizing for the self. And the self, as I'm now increasingly understanding and feeling and embodying, is comprised of 4 bodies, not the mental one only, which is what I spent 35 years of my life solely focused on, not even aware, or barely aware of the other 3. I was a bit aware of the physical body, definitely not aware of the emotional and spiritual one.
Yeah.
So how can I possibly be at my peak if I'm not aware of the other bodies and taking care of them? We spend all this time taking care of our mental bodies. We grow up in an education system to enhance our intellect, and we take care of that and enhance that, but we spend a lot less time on the others, a bit more on the physical, at least these days. So people are spending more on their physical bodies, but very little on emotional, especially men. Us men, we struggle big time with emotional body attunement and well-being, and spiritual for the majority of people in Spain is just like non-existent.
Yeah, and especially as you talk about the deeper levels of awareness, like spiritual or emotional, what is your thought on, is it nature or nurture? Like, are some people just born with this self-awareness gene? Everybody develop it over a course of time. And in fact, before you answer, I want to open this up as a poll to the audience. Everybody who is here with us live today, you should see a poll on your screen. Do you think and believe that self-awareness is innate or something that can be developed over time? Be interesting to see what all of you think here. The majority thinks that it can be developed and built over time, but about 25% do think that it's innate. What do you think, Szabi?
I'm definitely in the camp of the majority, but I'd like to speak to the camp who believe it's something innate. So if you think about a child, a baby, and its level of awareness of its environment and of itself, it's very limited. It's very limited on the physical body. It has very limited powers to self-regulate, not even often aware of its need to take in energy and excrete energy. It just kind of happens naturally and is not aware of it. So just comparing that to any adult, however self-aware they consider themselves, there is a natural evolution. So clearly it is something that we develop and build over time. However, the trajectory of that evolution can be massively influenced by nurture, i.e. by your conditioning, by where you put yourself, by your active choice to develop that or not.
Yeah, very interesting. And if you just go back to your personal journey, pre and post INSEAD, what did that journey look like, with respect to the 4 bodies that you spoke about, and also this element of nature versus nurture? Because maybe we're aware about some elements of our lives, just given the conditioning and the training that we have as high achievers or type A personalities. So what was that journey like, and what tools helped you pre and post INSEAD?
I have a lot to say here, Dea, so feel free to direct me what you think is more relevant and more important. Pre-INSEAD, I only knew what self-awareness was. So if someone told me the words, I would have made up like some dictionary definition that I may have known. But it wasn't a word that really came across my mind. I probably would have said it's the same thing as personal development. And even personal development, I would have said, well, I'm kind of developing as a human being in general, just by being and doing the stuff I'm doing in the external world, trying to achieve stuff, traveling, experiencing different cultures. So there's a kind of natural self-awareness that was self-awareness development and building that was happening to me, but none of it was intentional nor purposeful on my part. Hence why I probably wouldn't be able to answer the question of self-awareness pre-INSEAD. And then things started to shift a couple of years after INSEAD. I'll split my self-awareness journey in line with this definition I like of what is the self, and how do you discover the self so that you are more aware of it. So my self-discovery journey, I won't put in chronological form because I think it's kind of too messy in my head as well, and the amount of things I did and the amount of times I put my career completely on hold to go down this inner exploration path. But if I focus on where most people are and spend most of their time and their energy on, which is the mental body, then my first awakening of sorts was a personal development program It was a 4-day intense, 12 hours per day, very cognitive, very psychological, classroom-based, a lot of worksheets and exercises type of setup where across 4 days, my dad changed. That's actually understating what happened to me there. Yeah, it's not overstating. It's unbelievable what can be done in 4 days, given the right structure and context and leaders and teachers and mentors that I met there. Basically, I saw the world, it's as if I had seen the world in black and white before, and after this program, I saw it in color. I was highlighted certain psychological effects, traumas, limiting beliefs I had that I did not even know I had, hence no awareness of it. And through a series of processes, it was highlighted to me how much I'm controlled by my own subconscious, which is actually a much bigger part of the brain and actually controls our behaviors and actions a lot more than we realize. So that was the first one. And there are many good personal development programs out there. And it's around things like judgment. I didn't realize how judging I was. Like, what does it even mean? Like when you judge another person, you judge yourself. Another big piece there was seeing that what I perceive as negative, it's like, oh, I wish this didn't happen to me, or oh, why didn't I get that promotion? All these things I said, oh, if only this would have happened, my life would be better. All these things I started to see the yin and yang story, the truth, which is that all these challenges and failures, etc., actually mask an equal set of benefits. And there's a lot around that I can say, but maybe I'll leave it there. Basically, there were major steps on the cognitive side that I went through. And then on the subconscious side, in particular, shadow work. So like Jungian shadow work is something I wholeheartedly recommend everyone to look into. It is not woo-woo. It is not spiritual. This is pure clinical psychology. And whether through hypnosis regression, or life regression hypnosis, or some things I was experimenting with at the time, I was blown away by the stuff coming up. Then there's the physical body. So I move on to the second of the 4 bodies of the self. So on a physiological level, the only tangible actually body, the others are what we call subtle bodies. The only tangible body, I went through a revolution in the past 3 or 4 years. And one is around communication and relationship with my body. So the belief system I didn't even know I had and didn't think about was that my body's mine. If it doesn't work the way I want it to at peak performance all the freaking time, then I'm annoyed by it and thinking that it's letting me down. And that I've now completely changed as I realized that, first of all, our body is an entity by itself, and we have the privilege of using this vessel for this particular incarnation. And so it's kind of more of a partner rather than something we own. Ownership is problematic in various regards with the bodies, but in particular the physical body, it's a partner. Our bodies are a partner to do whatever we're supposed to do. And just that mindset shift of, okay, it may sound weird, whatever, let me just treat it that way and see what happens. And it's got to the point where through first cleansing, I started taking care of it. So I did a full-blown cleanse. Like our food systems, agricultural food and supply chain systems, the environment is so messed up that the stuff we're putting into our systems is highly toxic. So the first thing that I did was a cleanse, 6-day fast with colonic cleansing, i.e., cleaning it from behind and cleaning it from the top and rebuilding my microbiome from scratch. Very carefully over time, just giving my body that breath of fresh air, because once you start looking into food, and now we can have another talk about food and nutrition and things I discovered around that field, how much we're intoxifying ourselves is absolutely mind-blowing. I've completely changed my diet as a result. So part of that partnership is taking care of the body, and I cleansed it. And the other one around communication was I started to treat it as someone to communicate with. So I've now got to the point where I'm not always successfully, but I'm communicating with my body about what it needs. Whether that's in a meditative state, kinesiology techniques, which show you kind of very simple yes and no responses. You build trust over time with your body. So sometimes I'm going to ask my body, like, what is it you want to eat? There's certain techniques around that. And so I'm becoming more and more aware of that part of myself, the body and what it wants. And does it want to do yoga at 7 a.m. or does it want to do it at midday? Or am I going to force a certain routine on it when it could tell me, right? So the complete shift on that front. And then maybe, I'll move to the emotional body. Emotional intelligence, cultivating that is extremely hard, and it's harder for us men. So getting in tune with emotions, this is work in progress for me. It started, I guess, by understanding the destruction and havoc that suppressed emotions created within my being. It then moved to things like allowing my anger to be expressed in healthy ways. An emotion I realized I was suppressing for decades as a victim of what a lot of teachers of mine call the nice guy pandemic, way worse than the COVID pandemic, by the way, and feeding into positive emotions as well, and they're signaling. So thinking about fulfillment a little bit, I wasn't really even in touch about the feedback from my emotional body that what I'm doing in the moment right here, right now is great. I have very strong positive emotions, joy, fulfillment, satisfaction, happiness, whatever it may be. I wasn't really in tune with it. And most men struggle with it. And the reason why that's kind of now mind-blowing to me is because how, again, can I expect to be fulfilled if I can't even differentiate between like mediocre satisfaction to joy that sends like a tingle down my back, up my spine, makes the hair curl up on my neck, and there's this wave of energy that comes up towards my chest. Now I'm aware of what it is when I'm like really feeling joy. But that took a while of just taking a moment and like reflecting, like what is going on. And then the long-term journey is that you can start to live a life from a place of response instead of react. So let me illustrate. React is when we act or behave in response to an external event. It's an automated response. For example, if I see something and I'm jealous, I'm reacting to the external situation. A response would be, maybe I do start feeling jealous, but I recognize it in the moment. I'm able to control that emotion, this is self-regulation, bring me back to center. And from that place, without feeling jealous or angry or frustrated or whatever, then make a decision. What am I going to do next? Because that is the optimal place to make decisions. We are under-resourced. We are suboptimal decision makers when we are in a state of negative emotional charge. But anyway, the point is, now I'm better at self-regulation on the emotional body. Yeah. And then finally, spiritual body. So this is the most difficult one to even describe, let alone work with. It's the deepest aspect of our being. It's essentially the soul. And it's a form of connection with something bigger. So it doesn't matter whether you call it universe, Allah, Buddha, God, source, love, light, supreme consciousness. It's just a label, but it's a place from which we can receive a certain type of guidance and surrender to something bigger than ourselves. And it's not religious, it's not cultural. It's ultimately what some teachers would describe as oneness, a state of being connected to everything. So that's the definition of spiritual body. And I'm just going to give a random selection of practices that help me kindle and then strengthen that bond with my spiritual body that ultimately led to greater clarity, wisdom, and inner knowing and intuition and connection with my purpose as well in this life. The gratitude practice, I now do this with my partner before every meal. We just, whatever we're present with, it doesn't matter how small or big, just mention something that we're grateful for. Meditation, obviously, is one. You put yourself in a different state of consciousness with meditation, as you do with sleep, by the way, or coma, or even being drunk. These are all different states of consciousness, and they allow us access to different information fields than the base awake state that we tend to be in and we tend to be conscious in. So meditation allows us the opportunity to access the information field. And energy clearing, like Reiki, acupuncture, Qigong, mindfulness, working with energy healers who detect this stuff a lot better than I do myself. Spending time in nature is a huge one. It's just good for harmonizing all bodies, actually, not just spiritual, but I found for me, it helps, particularly on the spiritual front. and then exploring just various spiritual traditions and philosophies. It kind of nourishes both the spiritual body and the mental one. There's an intellectual component to it, but for a deeper sense of purpose, fulfillment, alignment, it helps to navigate what is fulfillment for me and what kind of traps and delusions of the mind am I in. Reading these things help me figure that out on the mental.
Yeah. Yeah, I personally love your definition of looking at it as the four bodies and pausing to be aware of what each of those bodies and the intelligence that's connected with those bodies is telling us, right? I mean, the smallest thing, like for instance, they say things like when you don't release anger and stress, it's stored in your hips, right? And then that comes out in many other ways, manifest in diseases and illnesses, but a lot of us don't even pause to recognize or reflect. There's so much, right? When we think of self-awareness, there's the mental, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, and it's on and on and on and on. And one of the things that I sometimes feel is exhausted, to be honest. I'm like, is this a never-ending journey? Right? Like, I'm like, oh, okay, I probably worked through a lot of traumas or, worked through a lot of patterns, and then you discover something new, and I'm like, oh, not again. Do you ever feel that way? And if the answer is yes, how do you work through that?
Good question. Because, I've been battling at various stages since my awakening. For me, the emotion is frustrated.
Yeah.
And that has a series of nuances and tastes to it. Frustrated because I feel as if I should be further ahead. For example, shadow work. I feel as if I should be able to self-heal now, given how many times I've done it. I know how it works. I've had successes. I've embodied it. And yet often I can't do it by myself. I need a guide still. And so it's more of a frustration that I try, I put in the effort, I put in the time, I dedicate the time, then I just can't connect to it. I can't connect to that body, which in this case is a subconscious mental body.
Yeah.
So for me, it's more of a frustration that I'm not where I think I want to be, which by itself is a reflection of the anxious overachiever and the very fundamental childhood basis trauma I have, which is not being good enough, or not feeling good enough. So I've gone on a bit of a tangent here, but the point is, yes, but then the way I do my best to bring myself back to center from that is to say, well, never-ending journey. I could say when I'm working on external world stuff versus my own internal world stuff, that's also sometimes feel like never-ending. There's never-ending promotions and salary increases and positioning and manipulating and whatever else I can do to get to some position in the world that I think will make me more fulfillment. That's also, the typical climbing of the corporate ladder. That's also a never-ending journey. So I thought, well, yes, I feel that here, sometimes in the internal world journey and work I do, but it's not fair to only focus on that because exactly the same thing is happening and was happening and probably will happen sometimes when I work in the external world. So at different stages in life, everything external to us and everything internal will become more important. We will spend more energy and time on one or the other. I spent 30-ish years doing mostly external world stuff. I didn't even realize this internal world is valuable and worth spending time on. Actually, I dismissed internal world work as just people who have loads of time on their hands and money too, which I didn't have as a child growing up. So I didn't invest in this any energy. But yes, of course, it's just like any growth journey. If you don't get tired or exhausted or frustrated, as I said, is more my case, then I'm probably not pushing myself hard enough, right? Then I'm not on the growth curve I could be, because that's ultimately how one progresses. And the other thing I try and do is bring some perspective to how far I've come. So I compare myself instead of to other people, instead of the neighbor's garden, right? I compare it to where I was 6 months ago, 12 months ago, whatever it may be. And that's the only valid and true comparison we should ever be making. Are we a better, more evolved version of ourselves today than yesterday than 6
Yeah.
months ago, 12 months ago. Especially in the last 3 years, like I am a different person from within. I have metamorphosized into a different being with different beliefs, much more empowering lenses with which I view the world. So in that sense, like, you know what? Yeah, damn right, Sabine. I can be proud of myself for a change instead of always wanting to be the bigger, the better, the faster, and whatever I'm
Yeah.
doing. I just try and connect with that emotion, that feeling, and and deal with it that way. But is it happening sometimes still? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And I guess that's what makes us human at the end of the day. And I think, like you said, it's probably important to remind ourselves constantly that, we're not competing and this is not another race that we're running to get first place. If I asked all of you here to rate yourselves on your understanding of your own self awareness, how would you rate yourself?
So where are you now on this? 0 to 5.
I think I'd say my current phase, I'd probably say it'd be like a 3.5.
Mhm.
What about you?
So, so there were periods where it's like, yeah, I've nailed this self-awareness stuff. Like 4.5, baby. Woohoo.
Yeah.
And then reality hits, and then humbleness hits, and you're like, oh, yeah, not really 4.5, maybe not even 0.5. So what happens is with greater awareness, your ability to see the scale changes. And
Yeah.
so this was my scale of 0 to 5. And the more aware I am, the bigger the scale gets. So I don't feel like I'm climbing. The scale is just getting bigger and bigger. But that is that is higher awareness. So what is higher awareness? I can put it in different words. Higher awareness means we know more of ourselves, yes. But it's also the more we can live consciously and out of our own design rather than things in life seeming random and then thinking that life is happening to us, which is excellent state, instead of for us.
Yeah.
Right? So the more the higher awareness is also about seeing more options. The more options we see in life to fulfill ourselves and build a fulfilling life professionally, romantically, or otherwise, that also reflects higher awareness. And the less we are controlled by our emotions, and the more we can use them to serve ourselves and others by understanding the feedback, right? And then acting upon it. From a place of understanding and elevated capacity to self-regulate, the higher well-being we're able to design for ourselves, right? So that's what the path of self-discovery looks like.
Yeah.
Continuous scale self-awareness, it never ends.
Yeah.
As I said, even the scale seems to just increase for me all the time.
Yeah, exactly right. And I almost feel like maybe the scale is also different for me within these different bodies that you spoke about, right? Maybe on my emotional, I'm not so bad, but on my physical, right now, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I know nothing. And then that scale looks so different for me in that spectrum of awareness versus others. So yeah, I totally agree with you when you say that the spectrum looks so different.
Yeah.
All right. So just looking at what the audience said, 56%. So majority said 3, and then about 30% said 4, and about 11% said 2. I think this is the perfect segue into doing this live coaching self-awareness exercise, so we can either check ourselves or also discover something new about ourselves, right? So I'll ask everybody here to please pull up a pen and a paper if you have it handy. And the screen is yours, Szabi.
Thank you. A few interesting things about self-awareness. It is a continuous journey, but each time is next level. And that next level unlocks a potential and a level of empowerment with which we can make more purposeful, meaningful, and fulfilling choices. So that's always available to us. It's just a question of whether we choose to take it. So when I take either my coaching clients or my group coaching clients through certain exercises, it doesn't matter what self-awareness level they are, because even with the same framework or exercise or stimulus or inspiration, they just go to the next level. It's a little bit like reading an inspiring book. You can read, George Orwell's 1984 when you're 18, and then it gives you certain messages. You read it when you're 28, and it's like you read it as if it's completely different because your awareness is increasing. So the same external stimuli, it will be like you just had a different experience reading this book. So fulfillment journey is similar. Just because I meditate for a week doesn't mean that, well, I've done it and there's no more value. No, each time you go into meditation, sometimes it's tougher. Sometimes, even though my awareness and my ability to meditate is increasing over time. So that's just a little point on that. And then on the exercise itself, we're not going to transform your inner world in half an hour, but hopefully there'll be some insights, some nuggets, something, a better, a more precise way of articulating what in your life is relevant and important that will come out of this exercise. So what I'd like everyone to do is think about, okay, we all want to raise fulfillment, right? I described what fulfillment is. Satisfaction, happiness is a temporary version of it. Let's work on a more temporary version for the moment, and let's work on your day yesterday, or pick a representative day in the past 7 days, and think about all the activities that you did. We could all have done in the realm of activities, literally million plus activities, but we all did just something like 20 to 40. So these activities are: you wake up, and then you brush your teeth, and then you read the paper, and then you check your phone, and then you check Instagram, and then you say hi to someone in the household. You start making breakfast, or you start already like writing, drafting emails, responding to emails, or you go for a run. With that level of disaggregation, I invite you in the next 4 minutes or so, just write down the activities that you did on this representative day. And the important thing is to be specific, right? So don't say, I cycled. Say something like, I cycled in the rain in a city share bike. And don't put, I work. It's not specific enough. At work, we do 100 different things. We can be drafting presentations. We can be mentoring our colleagues. We can be reporting to senior management. We can be traveling on a plane. We can be doing corporate boring admin and expenses. That's the level of specificity I'd like you to go into, because that's what will then enable you to classify, and I'll show you how to do that as a second part, what relationship you have with activity. What is your level of fulfillment in the moment when you do the activity? But first, just scan in that day, professionally and personally, without making a difference, just your whole day, your 16 hours or so of waking day. What were the activities that you did?
Okay.
Next representative day. That's it. Don't judge it, by the way, everyone. This is not the time to judge. It's what is. It's, you just describe. It happened. You kissed your partner. That's it. Put it. It happened. And we're going to give you 4 minutes.
Please hit the pause button now to give yourself time to do this exercise. Whenever you're done, come back and hit play to continue.
And I'll move on to the next stage, which is, okay, now you have a range of activities, both in your professional and personal life throughout those 16 hours of that given day. What is your relationship with that activity? So we're increasing here the self-awareness around, are you actually having a good time? And the 20 or 50 activities we do in any given day, which of those do you have a positive relationship or a negative relationship with? So that's what we're going to do next. And I'm going to share my screen. It's a very simple 5-row, 2-column table. Just in case some people can't see, I will describe it. On the left, you have love to at the top, desire to in the row below, like, want to below that, dislike, should, ought to below that, and I hate to, detest below that. This is a 5-point scale of your relationship with a certain activity that you will now use to classify your activities. So take your activity list and imagine yourself, literally you can close your eyes. I encourage always my clients to close their eyes, because otherwise the mind takes over and starts judging. Here, we want you to go back to that activity, take yourself back to that moment and think about, okay, how much did I enjoy this? Did I absolutely love this? Unbelievable, amazing. That's a category all by itself, love to. The next two categories in blue are activities you have positive relationship with. One is much stronger. I desire to do that activity. In that moment, I had this desire. Slightly less positive, but still positive, is I want to do this thing. I like to prepare a meal for my partner. Or I like to have sales meetings where I originate new deals. Whatever it is. I like public speaking. Then the next two in black are the ones you dislike. So you have a negative relationship with it. Again, two different types. One you dislike and one you really, really dislike. You literally hate it. You detest it. So all you're doing now in the next, I'll give you 5 minutes, which will allow you a chance to increase your activity list. Now you can see the full exercise, is just start copying into the second column with my red pen where I've put, and you just copy and paste in bullet format the activity. I'll give you an example. Someone says, oh, I love to do marathons. And then I usually question them deeper. Oh, really? Like, let me see photos, really cool. They show me photos. Every time they're like every moment of this race, even at the beginning, all I see is a screwed up face in nervousness, anxiety. Like it's revealed all over their body. They don't want to be there. And it turns out what they actually like is the belonging to a certain group of people that they associate with, and then the social reputation effects of being on Instagram showing they've done the activity. So catch yourself if you're judging and say, no. Go back to the moment, the exact moment you're doing it. And this is crucial, everyone, because the body does not lie. The mind lies all the time. It's full of biases. It's full of limiting belief. It's full of made up stories that aren't even true. It's full of childhood traumas that were protecting us at one time. And so it's not a reliable source. The body never lies because it's always in the present. It's never worrying about the future, and it's never in the past with resentment or guilt or shame or whatever. So take a step back to the moment. How are you feeling in that moment? That's what determines what category you put your activity into. I'll give you 4 or 5 minutes, and please feel free to expand your list of activities now you see what's going on.
Please hit the pause button now to give yourself time to do the second and final part of this exercise. Whenever you're done, come back and hit play to continue.
At least a few activities is what you're aiming to have identified first in a specific way, and then categorized according to your relationship with it.
Can I actually just say that this was so hard because I couldn't even remember what I did yesterday. So many blocks of the day. I'm like, what did I do? That itself was interesting for me to just sit and like reflect on how did I spend these, 12 hours or 16 hours of the day. So that part was interesting itself for me.
Yeah, that is insightful by itself, because you think, okay, maybe you had a bit of an unaware day, and that's okay. But don't forget, this is literally one day. This exercise can be expanded to be not just what you do in a day, but the activities you do in a week, in a month, in a year, separated by professional, personal, to really start focusing and honing in. And if this pattern you find is common, that you actually don't know what you did, then I would challenge you to say, wow, what do you think of that? What kind of responsibility are you taking over your own life satisfaction and fulfillment if you don't even know what you did yesterday? Because it's only by knowing what you did yesterday, then you can remember, like, okay, did I have a good day yesterday? Or was I just going through the motions, basically flatlining through life? What kind of life is that? Oh, am I okay with that? And sometimes it is okay. But on the whole, I would say it's not okay, because it's a life that is just happening to you, as opposed to you designing one with high levels of fulfillment. And these are the kind of insights that, after doing this exhaustively, right, of activities we do on a weekly, monthly basis, you start to see a map of where you are in your day-to-day fulfillment. Because these are the things we do day-to-day. All this spiritual deep stuff is all well and good. But actually, let's start with, how can we raise fulfillment right now, today, with the activities that you do? And just having this map allows you visually to see, okay, wow, I've got more things at the bottom than I realized, the bottom being the things I dislike. So then the next question is action. of course. How can you reduce, delegate, eliminate, exchange with someone else these activities? I'll give you one quick example. So for me, I found when doing this that I dislike doing the dishes, but I really detest doing ironing. And my partner was almost the opposite. So we swapped. I do now more dishes and she does my ironing. So literally, this very practical small thing raised both of our levels of fulfillment every week or every other week. That 1 hour of the 16 hours suddenly for me was more fulfilled, better spent. Great. That's as simple as fulfillment elevating gets. And sometimes that's actually a very powerful place to start.
Yeah.
Especially if you do this exhaustively and you start to see that the strategy then is, how can I put into action other strategies to reduce the stuff at the bottom and start doing more of the stuff at the top? That's it.
Yeah. What do you recommend for somebody who's doing this exercise for the first time? How often, should you do this? Is it every day, every week?
No, there's no need to do that kind of audit every week. The best way to do it is to do it once, but then exhaustively. Do it once that is relevant for the past year, because there's only so many activities we can do. It's not going to take that long, a couple of hours. Just description, right? They're focusing on the things that you do more frequently, of course. That's where most of the energy and time goes. So you want to be elevating that. So if you do that exhaustively, then you'll have a map of your fulfillment in this table that is applicable for the last 12 months. This may change over time, but if you do it well, there's no need to do it again, unless, of course, you have major structural change in your life, or the activities that you do drastically changes. But then hopefully you're doing that by design and not by some external imposition. Then you do it by design in order to be doing higher levels of fulfillment and positive relationship with those activities. So, like you said, you don't even know what you did, or it was tricky to connect with that. Yeah, that could be one issue coming up. Another one is that actually you find it hard to connect to the emotion in that moment of doing it. And that would mean, yes, that muscle of being aware of the emotional body is not there. It's not trained. That needs training. You can adapt this exercise and say at the very end of each day, just do like a 3-minute audit. Pick 5 activities in a day, and okay, did I like this? Did I not? This is literally muscle practice, the mental, emotional body practice. So finding the right words, that's mental, associating it with the emotional body feedback you had in the middle of the activity. And then it's going to become stronger, more automatic, easier, flowing, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess practice does make you better and better, right?
More self-aware. Yeah. Practice isn't perfect, but it makes you more self-aware.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I loved it. I really loved it. I'm going to try and make some time every week at least to do this reflection and audit. We're towards the last few minutes to answer some of the questions. Does meditation help in self-awareness?
Self-awareness, in the way I like to define it, is about being aware of what the 4 bodies are doing. If meditation helps you be in tune with what those 4 bodies are doing, then absolutely. For the majority of people, meditation is very easily accessible, free, able to do anytime tool to get you in touch with these more subtle bodies and start creating relationship with them, feeling them, getting any insights, feedback, etc. That's not to say it's the only way. There are other tools out there that allow people to connect with other bodies. You don't even need to meditate cross-legged like some Tibetan monk on a mountain. Just go for a walk in nature alone. Alone tends to be important because talking with other people is a distraction. It's a noise. You're not going to tune in with yourself when you're tuning in with the outside world. So you can get yourself in a meditative state, which is the whole point of meditation, which is when you're tuned in with these other information fields that are more conducive to you getting to know your other bodies in a deeper way. So that's how I'd answer that.
Yeah, I mean, the alone bit is the most important, right? Because usually we're so conditioned to always want some kind of external noise. And I think I love that bit of taking time alone. Okay, so some more questions are coming in.
Well, let me
All
ask you, Neha. Does meditation help in your self-awareness? Do you meditate?
I do every day. Yeah, I do think it helps me. Whereas especially things like what thoughts am I even thinking, right? Like, because some days when I meditate, my mind's not empty. It's actually running through so many different thoughts. So I actually find meditation useful to just observe what those thoughts are versus, the more popular way of like emptying your mind and all of that. To be honest, my mind is not very empty when I meditate. So that's how it helps me, just to observe the thoughts that are coming through.
Yeah, and that's absolutely okay, by the way. It's a condition of the human collective that we are too mind and mental obsessed and run. And therefore, having a lot of thoughts is very common during meditation. In fact, even advanced practitioners sometimes have days when it's just, this is too much stuff going on in their head and they can't quieten it. So it's okay. It's about even accepting that as part of the journey. It's sometimes also frustrating. And I speak from experience there, where you sometimes get very quickly to meditative deep states and like, levels. And then the next day it's like, what
Exactly.
this out of my head. This is not.
Yeah.
So that's how it goes. But over time, in general, the trend is that you get better in being present and filtering out everything, including and primarily thoughts and that noise and that distraction, and being able to tune into the other three subtle bodies.
Yeah, totally agree. So we have another very interesting question from Paul, who's asking, how do you balance self-awareness with self-confidence without becoming overly critical of yourself?
A confidence that comes from within. Is there any true confidence? If I'm confident because I have a spectacular car and a beautiful title on my business card, that's not true confidence. That is coming from something external that can be taken away at any time, right? My car could be stolen, I can be fired at any time. If, on the other hand, that confidence is coming from within, then that can be true self-confidence. And I don't believe you can get there without knowing yourself. Like, how can you be confident in showing up to the world if you don't know yourself and the limitations and strengths of each of your bodies, right? Each of your four bodies. How can you just kind of pretend it, right? If I did seem confident before my awakening, pre-INSEAD, even though I didn't do any self-awareness work, that's because it came from a less true place. It came from an achievement place, and I achieved a few things, and great. But it wasn't the level of power of innate self-confidence that's now radiating from me, independently of what car I have or title I have or don't have. I hope that helps, Paul. And the second part seems like a different thing. You're judging yourself for your shortcomings. That's just another way of putting being critical. And that's a lack of self-love. That's a lack of self-acceptance. And that's one of the top 5 human collective traumas out there. So if you do feel that, you're definitely not alone. I can 100% relate. I saw Bella had an interesting.
Yeah, Bella is asking, among the self-awareness journey, which part was the most effective in your opinion?
Let me ask you this one first, then I'll answer. What's been your most powerful retreat or teacher or guidance or book you read, whatever it was?
God, I think this is going to be a difficult one for me. Because I guess similar to you, I've tried so many tools, and in each phase of my life, I think there was a different tool that helped me uncover so many different bits to myself. But I'd say the most transformational to my self-awareness was definitely going to an ayahuasca retreat. Just opened me up in ways that I cannot explain in words. I think words don't do justice. I know it's a little bit, I would say, controversial when it comes to plant medicine or in my experience. There were no clocks anywhere. And of course, we didn't have our phones, no books, no music. It's literally just you and nature. And you realize how uncomfortable that is in the beginning, right? Because you're like, just me and my thoughts. Oh my God, this is difficult. Me become aware of my own childhood patterns, what you said, shadow work, my mom and dad, like mother and father wounds, all that stuff. I just came out of it feeling like, oh my God, this is who I am. So I'd say that.
Yeah, I'd say this is a huge topic, and actually, maybe we should do a talk on that, specifically sacred plant medicine, with which, I've also worked for years.
Yeah.
In different shapes and forms. Depending on your stage of journey, different tools will become more relevant or more powerful. So there are some things I did in December that would have been inappropriate for me to do 3 years ago. Let me recommend a book which was very helpful for me, and I've read it twice in different periods of my evolution. Untethered Soul by Michael Singer.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
is a phenomenal book. It just somehow the words, the story, the narrative just hit home of what is actually a very simple message that spiritual teachers, and especially the East, has been talking about for millennia, which is that we are not our thoughts. Our thoughts are distinct. It's chatter. It's not us. And we identify with our thoughts. We think we are. The self is our thoughts. And there's a whole range of problems with that. Our thoughts become our master instead of us being the master of our thoughts. 90% plus of people on this planet today are in that phase where they think every thought is them, as opposed to, this is just a thought. Sometimes it's just background radio noise, and I wish I could switch it off. And often I can't. Meditation, I'll try meditation to switch it off or like quieten it down. Doesn't always work. And this book, Untethered Soul, it's about untethering your soul from the thoughts. It was very powerful for me. But Bella asked me about my journey. This January, one very powerful thing I did was a dark retreat. The dark retreat, or darkness retreat, is a spiritual initiation or spiritual journey practiced by ancient wisdom and ancient cultures for millennia. It involves you being, for a determined period of time, which in my case was 6 days, in a very simple room, completely devoid of any light. So complete absence of light for 6 days non-stop. And food is delivered to you in a special way such that it doesn't affect the darkness, but you are in pitch black. Your circadian rhythm is like threefold. No sun to link into. The fact you've taken away the visual information means that of all this noise and distraction that makes it more difficult to connect with the subtle bodies is taken away. So all you're left with is touch and a little bit of sound that's pretty quiet. So not much sound going on either. So you're left with only touch as the distraction. And therefore, in those meditations and centering practices, I was in touch with my subconscious mind almost constantly from day 3 onwards. And I started to communicate with it in a non-ordinary way. It's a combination of visuals and feelings that the subconscious communicates with. And that just made me realize, holy smokes, this is a whole part of me and being that is uncovered. It's not random. It's coming from me. So it's part of me that I didn't know about. And there's some power there because it's information, it's energy. That was big for me. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Empowered INSEADian and that it inspired you towards greater life fulfillment and elevated consciousness.
If you have an empowering, raw, and real story to share, please get in touch with us to discuss how we could include it on the show. And finally, if you enjoyed this episode, show us some love by either commenting or hitting the like, subscribe, and share buttons. It supports us more than you know.